Irashimasu, hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Try from Japan. This is part 3 in a retrospective on the Japanese animation company Studio Ghibli. If you haven't seen the 2 previous parts, then you can click the links above to go straight to them. Otherwise, we shall dive straight in with part 3, which looks at the studio's works from the year 2000 until present day in 2021. The start of 2000 had a little television short surprise in store, with an 18-minute animated film called Ghibli's, airing on MTV in Japan and directed by Yoshiyuki Momose, a key animator on many of the studio's previous works. The film is a slice-of-life look at the fictional goings-on at Studio Ghibli. Many of the characters are stand-ins for actual Studio Ghibli staff. The new millennium would see the biggest and most well-known feature to date for the studio, with a Miyazaki-directed fantasy released in 2001, Sento Chihiro no Kamikakushi, known as Spirited Away. In Spirited Away, Chihiro is a sullen 10-year-old girl who wanders into a world ruled by witches and monsters where bad-behaved humans are changed into animals. When her parents gorge themselves on enchanted food, they turn into pigs, and Chihiro must overcome her fears in order to enter the spirit world and win them back. To do this, she must appeal to Yubaba, the scary old witch who runs the spirit bathhouse. The film's protagonist, Chihiro, was based on the daughter of director Seiji Okada, longtime friend of Miyazaki, who would visit his home with his then 10-year-old girl every summer for a short vacation. Miyazaki even made a focus group of young girls from within the studio's staff to help refine the feature's appeal to that demographic. Spirited Away was released theatrically in Japan in July 2001. It grossed a record 1.6 billion yen, or $13.1 million, in its first 3 days alone, beating the previous record which had been set by Princess Mononoke. It went on to gross 30.4 billion yen to become the highest-grossing film in Japanese history at that time, a title which was held until last year in 2020 with the release of the film Demon Slayer, a feature that would be a direct sequel to the first season of a very popular anime series. Spirited Away has received significant critical success on a broad scale and is considered as one of the best animated films ever made in multiple media polls. 2001 would see the opening of a museum dedicated to the studio and its works. It is located in Onokashira Park in Mitaka, a western city of Tokyo, and was designed by Hayao Miyazaki himself using storyboards similar to the ones he creates for his films. The design was influenced by European architecture, such as the hilltop village of Calcutta in Italy. The museum features internal and external spiral staircases built from iron, interior bridges and balconies stretching throughout the building's height. These staircases lead to exhibits, dead ends and across bridges. These characteristics are meant to reflect Miyazaki's building designs displayed in his film work. Miyazaki's aim was to make the building itself part of the exhibit, and for the museum to be an uplifting and relaxing experience that makes you feel more enriched when you leave than when you entered. Since its creation in 2000, more than a dozen exclusive animated shorts have been created to be screened at the museum, including Mei to Konekabesu, known as Mei and the Kitten Bus. This is a 13-minute sequel to the film My Neighbor Totoro. Written and directed by Miyazaki, it concentrates on the character of Mei from the original film and her adventures one night with the Kitten Bus, which is an offspring of the Cat Bus from the original film. The studio would release their first sequel of sorts in 2002. This would be directed by studio animator Hiroyuki Morita, who had done works on major anime projects which included Akira and Lupin the Third, before joining the studio to work on Kiki's Delivery Service and My Neighbors the Yamadas. Neko no Ongeishi, known as The Cat Returns, is based on Baron The Cat Returns, a manga spin-off of the studio's 1995 feature Whisper of the Heart, written by Eo Hiragi. The film begins with high school student Haru rescuing a cat that is about to be run over by a truck and discovering that the cat is actually a prince called Lune. Out of gratitude, Lune's father, the Cat King, asks her to marry Lune. Haru is brought to the Cat Kingdom where she starts to develop feline features. When she is prevented from leaving the Cat Kingdom, however, the Baron and Toto, 2 statues that have magically been given life, provide assistance in gaining her freedom. In the original feature Whisper of the Heart, we are introduced to two cat characters, Baron Humbert von Gickingen and Mutter, both of whom are depicted in the same way in The Cat Returns. The Cat Returns would also feature a short before its feature during its theatrical run, a sequel to the TV special Ghibli's. The film follows its predecessor in being about life at Studio Ghibli, with Mimose sketching out his fellow staff members as part of the cast once again. While the film comes across as experimental and slightly like an inside joke, it does pay tribute to the late Ghibli animation director Yoshifumi Kondo and his comic work at Animagi magazine. After the success of Spirited Away, the box office and critical response to this feature would sadly be lackluster, and it was only the 7th highest grossing Japanese film of 2002, gaining mixed reviews. Miyazaki would be back with another fantasy tale in 2004 with Haru no Oguku Shiro, known as Howl's Moving Castle. The film is loosely based on the 1986 novel of the same name by British author Diana Wynne Jones. The story is set in a fictional kingdom where both magic and early 20th century technology are prevalent against the backdrop of a war with another kingdom. The film tells the story of a young, content milliner named Sophie, who is turned into an old woman by a witch who enters her shop and curses her. She encounters a wizard named Howl and gets caught up in his resistance to fighting for the king. Influenced by Miyazaki's opposition to the United States invasion of Iraq in 2003, the film contains strong anti-war themes. Miyazaki stated that he had a great deal of rage about the Iraq War, which led him to make a film which he felt would be poorly received in the United States. It also explores the theme of old age, depicting age positively as something which grants the protagonist freedom. The film contains feminist elements as well, and carries messages about the value of compassion. Leaving the average performance of The Cat Returns behind, soon after its release it had become the third most financially successful film in Japan of all time, behind Titanic and Spirited Away, and has generally favorable reviews, being considered as one of the studio's most recognizable works alongside Spirited Away and My Neighbor Totoro. In 2006, Toshio Suzuki was due to direct their next feature when he noticed that Miyazaki's son Goro, who had recently joined the studio after spending years as a landscape architect, had produced some wonderful storyboards for their next release. Suzuki recommended Goro for directing it, and so he took on the direction for Gido Senkei, known as Tales from Earthsea. The film is based on a combination of plot and character elements from the first 4 books of Ursula K. Le Guin's Earthsea series, as well as his father's manga series The Journey of Shuna. The story is set in the land of Earthsea, where a mysterious force threatens to plunge humanity into destruction and chaos. A powerful wizard named Sparrowhawk seeks the source of his world's imbalance, and along the way rescues a runaway prince called Aaron. When Sparrowhawk's powers begin to weaken, he and Aaron must join forces with a former priestess and her daughter to defeat an evil foe whose quest for immortality will destroy Earthsea altogether. Although performing better than The Cat Returns at the box office, the critical reception in Japan was favorable but mixed when compared to that of other Ghibli movies, and public perception gives the feature a very disappointing score on popular media websites. Goro was also presented with Japan's Bunshun Raspberry Award for Worst Director, and with Tales in Earthsea receiving the award for the Worst Movie at the end of 2006. 2008 would see another Hayao Miyazaki vision in the form of Gake no Une no Ponyo, known as Ponyo on the Cliff by the Sea. Loosely based on Hans Christian Andersen's Little Mermaid tale, Ponyo follows a goldfish princess named Brunhilde, who wants to explore beyond the sea. When she ends up nearly lifeless on the shore of a small oceanfront village, 5-year-old Sasuke rescues her, renames her Ponyo, and vows to take care of her. Ponyo's father, an undersea sorcerer who seems human, recaptures her, but Ponyo is determined to use her father's magic to turn into a girl and return to Sasuke, but unleashing her powers could disrupt the balance of nature. After the poor reaction received by Tales of Earthsea, the studio were pleased with both the financial success and widespread acclaim from film critics and public perception, showing that the studio's appeal had not suffered from its previous effort. Hiromasa Yonebayashi had worked with the studio since 1997, working as an in-between animator, key animator, and animation director. In 2010 he would make his directorial debut along with screenwriting credits to Miyazaki on Karagurashi no Ariete, known as The Secret World of Ariete, a fantasy tale based on the 1952 novel The Borrowers by Mary Norton. Ariete, a tiny but tenacious 14-year-old, lives with her parents in the recesses of a suburban garden home, unbeknownst to the homeowner and her housekeeper. Like all little people, Ariete remains hidden from view, except during occasional covert ventures beyond the floorboards to borrow scrap supplies like sugar cubes from her human hosts. But when 12-year-old Sean, a human boy who comes to stay in the home, discovers his mysterious housemate one evening, a secret friendship blossoms. If discovered, their relationship could drive Ariete's family from the home and straight into danger. Ariete debuted at number 1 in the Japanese box office. More than 1 million people went to see the film during its opening weekend alone. It was a top-grossing Japanese film in the box office for the year of 2010, grossing approximately 9.25 billion yen, or $110 million, and with very favourable reviews from critics and the public, the studio seemed to be back on top. Although Goro Miyazaki had been met with concern and trepidation after the response to Tales of Earthsea, he was given the opportunity to direct on the studio's next release. Coming in 2011, entitled Kokoriko Kazakara, known as From Up on Poppy Hill. It is set in 1963 Yokohama, Japan, and tells the story of Ume Matsuzake, a high school girl living in a boarding house called Kokoriko Manor. When Ume meets Shun Kazama, a member of the school's newspaper club, they decide to clean up the school's clubhouse, the Latin Quarter. However, Tokumaru, the chairman of the local high school and a businessman, intends to demolish the building for redevelopment, and Ume and Shun, along with her classmates, must persuade him to reconsider. The film received mainly favourable reviews from critics and the public, but only made half of the box office in comparison to 2010's Secret World of Ariete. 2013 would see 2 releases from the studio. Originally intended to be released together as a double feature in theatres, the second film had been delayed for a few months, and so the studio decided to release them separately. Firstly was a Hayao Miyazaki feature called Kaze Tachinu, known as The Wind Rises. The Wind Rises is a fictionalized biographical film of Jiro Horikoshi, designer of the Mitsubishi A5M fighter aircraft and its successor, the Mitsubishi A6M0, used by the Empire of Japan during World War II. The film is adapted from Miyazaki's manga of the same name, which was in turn loosely based on both the 1937 novel The Wind Has Risen by Tetsuo Hori and the life of Jiro Horikoshi. The film is adapted from Miyazaki's manga of the same name, which was in turn loosely based on both the 1937 novel The Wind Has Risen by Tetsuo Hori and the life of Jiro Horikoshi himself. Jiro, inspired by the famous Italian aeronautical designer Caproni, dreams of flying and designing beautiful airplanes. Nearsighted from a young age and thus unable to become a pilot, Jiro joins the aircraft division of a major Japanese engineering company in 1927. His genius is soon recognized and he grows to become one of the world's most accomplished aircraft designers. The film chronicles much of his life and depicts key historical events that deeply affected the course of it, including the Great Kanto earthquake of 1923, the Great Depression, the tuberculosis epidemic, and Japan's plunge into war. He meets and falls in love with Nahoko, and grows and cherishes his friendship with his colleague Honjo. A tremendous innovator, Jiro leads the aviation world into the future. The film grossed 11.6 billion yen, or $113 million at the Japanese box office, becoming the highest grossing film in Japan for the year in 2013. And it received critical acclaim, with 13 nominations and 17 awards including Best Animated Feature, and 1 Academy Award nomination. The second film of 2013 was Kaguya Hime no Monogatari, known as The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, directed by Iso Takahata and based on The Tale of the Bamboo Cutter, which is a 10th century Japanese literary tale. This would sadly be the last film he directed before his untimely death in 2018. Deep in the countryside, a man named Okina works as a bamboo cutter in a forest, chopping away at the hollow plants day after day. One day he discovers a small baby inside a glowing bamboo shoot. He immediately takes her home, convinced that she is a princess sent to earth as a divine blessing from heaven. Okina and his wife Una take it upon themselves to raise the infant as their own, watching over her as she quickly grows into an energetic young girl. Given the name Kaguya, she fits right in with the village she has come to call home, going on adventures with the other children and enjoying what youth has to offer. But when Okina finds a large fortune of gold and treasure in the forest, Kaguya's life is completely changed. Believing this to be yet another gift from heaven, he takes it upon himself to turn his daughter into a real princess using the wealth he has just obtained, relocating the family to a mansion in the capital. As she leaves her friends behind to enter into an unwanted life of royalty, Kaguya's origins and purpose slowly come to light. The film had moderate success at the box office but has been praised by critics and public alike, being reviewed as one of the best features to date from the studio. Only half a year later, the studio would release another feature, with Yonabayashi back as director for 2014's Amwade no Mane, known as When Mane Was There, an animated drama which would be his last for the studio, before deciding to leave to work for another Japanese animation called Studio Ponyak, when Miyazaki himself announced his intention to take retirement in 2015. The story focuses on a young girl called Anna. Suffering from frequent asthma attacks, she is quiet, unsociable, and isolated from her peers, causing her foster parent endless worry. Upon recommendation by the doctor, Anna is sent to the countryside in hope that the cleaner air and more relaxing lifestyle will improve her health and help clear her mind. Engaging in her passion for sketching, Anna spends her summer days living with her aunt and uncle in a small town near the sea. One day, while wandering outside, Anna discovers an abandoned mansion known as the Marsh House. However, she soon finds that the residence isn't as vacant as it appears to be, running into a mysterious girl called Mane. Mane's bubbly demeanor slowly begins to draw Anna out of her shell as she returns night after night to meet with her new friend. But it seems there is more to the strange girl than meets the eye. As her time in the town nears its end, Anna begins to discover the truth behind the walls of the Marsh House. The film was another great success at the Japanese box office, making 3.85 billion yen or $36 million and receiving almost universal praise. It was at this point, after the retirement of Hayao Miyazaki in 2015, the studio decided to take an extended break from creating works. And it would not be until 2017 when the next announcement from the studio would happen. Hayao Miyazaki was to return to direct another animated feature for the company, to be called Kimitachi wa do Ikaro ka, known as How Do You Live, and with an expected release date of 2021. However, due to a worldwide outbreak from a new virus called COVID-19 in early 2020, the film has been delayed and has no current release date. In 2019, it was also announced that Goro Hiyazaki was directing a feature that would be the studio's first completely computer-generated animation. Called Ayoto Majo, known as Earwig and the Witch, it was due to be released in theatres in 2020, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, a move was made to air it at the end of 2020 on Japanese television, and plans for a spring 2021 theatrical run. The storyline is that not every orphan would love living at St. Morwell's Home for Children, but Earwig does. She gets whatever she wants whenever she wants, and it's been that way since she was dropped on the orphanage doorstep as a baby. But all that changes the day Bella Yaga and the Mandrake come to St. Morwell's disguised as foster parents. Earwig is whisked off to their mysterious house full of invisible rooms, potions and spellbooks, with magic around every corner. Most children would run in terror from a house like that, but not Earwig. She uses her own cleverness with a lot of help from a talking cat, deciding to show the witches who is boss. Both the critical and public reaction to the televised airing has unfortunately been mainly negative, with criticism on the uninspiring story and people being unimpressed and wishing for the classic Ghibli hand-drawn animation styling. And that is the story so far for Studio Ghibli. The studio has also been involved in a number of co-productions, and creators have been involved in working storylines and animations for a number of original video games, which I have not covered in this retrospective series, but these can easily be discovered with some brief internet searches. On a separate note, if you want to look at some live-action content aimed at an older audience produced by Studio Ghibli's sister company, then look up Studio Kajino. They have been involved in 2 feature films and a number of music videos since the year 2000. Kajino is spelt Kajino. So thank you so much for watching, especially to those who have watched all 3 parts of this retrospective. I intend to do a bonus video looking at some of the Studio Ghibli Laserdisc releases I have in my collection, but that will be for another day. Please like, comment and subscribe if you haven't already, and as always I have one last thing to say, and that is arigatou gozaimasu.